The antique mirror arrived shattered. It was a large, ornate thing I'd ordered online from an auction house specializing in defunct estates. I planned to use the frame for a painting, but when the box arrived, a heavy glass plate was cracked into 1,000 spiderwebs. I started carefully removing the broken shards, wearing thick gloves. The glass was old, maybe from the 1920s, and the backing was a thick, mercury-based coating that gave the remnants a strange, smoky reflectivity. Deep in the back of the frame, tucked between the velvet backing and the heavy wood, I found a photograph. It was an old black and white print of a family, a father, a mother, and a young daughter, all smiling stiffly in a living room. The photo was pristine, untouched by time. The unsettling thing was the daughter. She was standing slightly apart, and her smile was too wide, too vacant. She looked like she was mimicking the emotion without feeling it. I put the photo on my mantelpiece. I didn't think about it again until the next day. I was sitting in the living room, reading, when I glanced up at the photo. The daughter was still, smiling, but she wasn't standing next to her parents. She had moved. She was now standing directly in front of her father, covering him almost entirely, except for the top of his head and the dark blur of his shoulder. I stood up, staring. The photo was a still image. It couldn't move. I picked it up. The image was a single printed emulsion. The placement was fixed. I must have been mistaken about where she was standing initially. I put it back down, meticulously observing the new position. The daughter's head was now aligned with the father's mouth. An hour later, I looked again. The daughter was gone from the picture entirely. Now, it was just the mother and the father. The mother was still smiling, but the father's expression had changed. His mouth was open in a silent, wide, awful scream. I ran to my phone and searched the auction house's archives. I found the estate listing for the mirror. It belonged to the Blackwood family, who had tragically disappeared in 1927. The local police had concluded they left everything behind. They were never found. I called my neighbor, a local history buff named Mr. Dale. Mr. Dale, do you know anything about the Blackwood disappearance from the 1920s? Yes, absolutely tragic, he said, his voice crackling with excitement. The mother, Eloise, was known to be obsessed with mirrors, believed they held a person's presence. The official report said the father, George, was the first to disappear. He vanished one morning while having breakfast. The daughter and mother followed weeks later. I stared at the photo. George, the father, was now gone from the picture, replaced by a blurry, indistinct smudge. Only Eloise, the mother, remained, smiling. I turned the photograph over, my hands shaking. The back was blank, except for a single sentence written in elegant, looping script. The mirror will not show you what you look like. It will show you what is left of you. I turned the picture back over. Eloise's smile was now the most unsettling thing I had ever seen. It was serene, content, and final. She was alone in the picture, standing in the empty living room. Then she moved. Her head tilted slightly to the right, and her eyes, which had been looking forward, now seemed to look at me. I couldn't breathe. I knew what the photograph was showing, the order of the disappearances. Sarah, the daughter, had been the second to vanish, and Eloise, the mother, would be the last. And as each person was removed from the photograph, the mirror's magic was consolidating the remaining life force into the glass, leaving the subject smiling and alone. I had to get rid of the photo. I grabbed it and rushed to the fireplace. I tried to tear it, but the paper was unnaturally tough. I threw it into the fireplace and lit a match. The paper didn't burn. The flames simply washed over the surface of the photograph like water. The paper remained cool and unscorched. I looked down at the image. Eloise was laughing now, her head thrown back in silent, mocking glee. Suddenly, the last remnant of the family vanished from the photograph. The paper was completely blank. I dropped it on the rug, staring at the empty white rectangle. I was safe. A curse was broken. The last person was gone. But then, the final detail of the mirror's power became chillingly clear. The photo was blank. It was an empty slate. And the mirror, the heavy, shattered frame sitting on the floor, was waiting. I slowly stood up, looking at the frame. I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Tiny, subtle glints of light coming from the edges of the jagged shards. The mirror's backing, which had been smoky and dark, was now sharp and clear. I walked over to the frame. I looked down at the largest, sharpest shard of glass. And there, staring back at me from the smoky depths of the fragment, was the smiling face of Eloise Blackwood. And next to her, tiny, indistinct, but recognizable, was the silhouette of my own head, peering over her shoulder. The mirror had consumed the entire Blackwood family, and now it was starting the process over. The final blank photograph was the first step. It was the family portrait of the next victim. I backed away, terrified, and ran out the front door, leaving the shattered mirror frame and the blank photograph on the floor. I don't know what happened to the Blackwood family, but I know they are still here. They are in the mirror, watching me. And every time I pass a reflective surface, I check to see if Eloise's smile is superimposed over mine, or if the blank photo on the mantelpiece has finally developed a new, unwilling subject.